And he knocks on the innkeeper's door, and the innkeeper says, "Oh, yes, how can I help you?" "I need a room. I really need a room. You don't know how bad I need a room. My bride is expecting." "No, sir, we have no room in the inn for you." They had a housing crisis in Bethlehem. There was no room. It is always an honor to rise in this, the people's house. And once again today, sadly and unfortunately, we're continuing to have to hold this government to account as it relates to producing documents that has been requested repeatedly by a clear majority in this House and backed by the Speaker's ruling. And once again, it would behoove this government to act upon that. Then we can move on to other business that Canadians want us to be discussing as well. But you cannot do that until we have a surety of transparency on this very serious matter. Part of the role of the official opposition is to hold the government to account and to make sure that taxpayers' funds are being used responsibly and for good reason. Anyone looking at this right now would clearly understand and clearly agree with the official opposition and other opposition parties that there is a definite lack of transparency, and therefore Canadians are wondering, we're working hard every day to make ends meet, and yet somehow the friends and special privileged groups and organizations that seem to match ideologically with the government of the day are receiving many and abundant amounts of funds. It's amazing how much funds they're getting to fund an ideology without results. I think many Canadians share our frustration is that you have a government that soars in the rhetoric of healing the planet, cleansing the oceans, rolling back the tides, and bringing down temperatures, but when you look at the reality of it, there are no results. Lots of money out the door, lots of philosophical debate, lots of virtue signaling at these grand national stages and conferences all around the world. Oh, go over and talk about, we're going to do these great things for the environment. Just look at how much money we're spending. But you know what? Canadians are not near as concerned about an announcement that's going to spend more money on a government's friends. No, what they want is results. Yes. And they're frustrated because they're getting no results for the absolute gargantuan proportion of money that's being spent. We need a government that prioritizes the priorities of the people. And I think if they did take it to the people in a carbon tax election, like we have been calling for, they would hear clearly that their priorities around this are not the priorities of the people they say they represent. Need I go any further than the grandiose announcements about planting of trees? When you think about it, 2 billion trees. It's amazing. It's incredible. It makes you feel warm and fuzzy. We're going to plant all these trees. But when you ask how many trees have been planted, do you know how much and what percentage of those trees have been planted?
Tell us.
0.04%. Wow! It's an amazing outcome for the amount of money that they're spending, how little results we're getting. People want real, tangible, practical results. And that's why we are going to continue to hold this government to account and demand transparency and ask that they release the documents as a majority of this House, the people's representatives, have clearly asked for, and as the Speaker has ruled and said that we are deserved. It is time that transparency came to this House. It is time that honesty came to the people's chamber. Amen. And they get the results that they want. Hallelujah. So we come to this place now where we're looking at gargantuan amounts of money going out the door, no real transparency or accountability, and as a result, Canadians' level of frustration is growing. You see it on their faces. They work day after day to earn the dollars that they have, and at the end of the day, they have more bills than they have money to pay for those bills. No wonder they're upset. No wonder they're angry when they look at a government that does not prioritize their needs and doesn't seem to be concerned about their priorities. Instead, they got all kinds of time and money for their ideology. But right now, with a nation who is facing an economic crisis, with the threat of tariffs on the horizon, and we've got right now basically people wondering, do I pay the rent? Do I get groceries? Or do I put gas in my car? Yeah, exactly. Can I buy my kids Christmas this year? Or do I make my rent payment? These are not fictional stories. These are realities. Our food bank use has overwhelmingly grown. In my own region, food bank usage is up over 30% year over year. These are staggering stats. We've got people now that are wondering, especially seniors on fixed incomes, how do I make it to the new year? And I'm looking at escalating power bills. We're looking at escalating fuel costs. And every time I go to the groceries, get groceries, it's costing more and more. I think we have a responsibility as parliamentarians to be responding to those kind of needs and those kind of matters. And it's too bad that those on the other side will not simply comply with the order of this House, release those documents, and get back to work on the priorities of Canadians. And the frustration is real.
Yeah, it is.
They're being taxed and they're being burdened. And I can't help but think of this, Madam Speaker. History, they say, repeats itself, but really in reality it probably doesn't repeat itself, but it certainly does rhyme. And you'll find a rhyme throughout history and cycles within politics and governments and societies. And it is that wonderful time of year. It's the Christmas time of year. And I can't help it, be no surprise to many in this House, but I can't help but think of that most wonderful story that was told and is still being told the world over, to whom literally billions will be celebrating this month. And that is the wonderful story of Christmas. And you say, well, my land, how does Christmas relate to what we're talking about? Oh, it does. Because on that very first Christmas, the first Noel, it is written that it came at a time of taxation. It was a heavy, burdensome time of taxation, and therefore they had to do a census to find out exactly what their population was in that region so they could collect more taxes. So the census was rendered, and everyone was to return to their place of origin or birth. And so a young man by the name of Joseph, who had taken a young, beautiful lady by the name of Mary to be his wife, he had to make the journey to Bethlehem. It wasn't an easy journey, and we have a way of romanticizing the imagery, and we have these wonderful images of the Nativity. But trust me, it probably wasn't very pretty nor exciting at the time for this terrified young couple who were living under accusations, probably being very much falsely accused. The rumor mill was rampant. They were heading out into uncertainty, and she wasn't just early in her pregnancy. She was a long ways into the pregnancy. And I don't know about you, and I'm thankful I've never had the experience of having to carry a young one inside, but my beloved bride has. And I must say, yes, I had the better part. I will agree. And I remember when she was with child, I had no full way of totally understanding that or relating to it. But can you picture this? Go with me now on this journey. Can you imagine what they would have been feeling as they started out to go through, and here's this very pregnant lady on the back of a donkey, going on a bumpy road, very much with child, with a young man.
And they're not smooth.
And they're not smooth on the back of a donkey, and it's not comfortable. And they're making this journey to a place called Bethlehem, and they're wondering, can you imagine the thoughts they were thinking, Madam Speaker? This is not how I imagined it would be, Joseph. This isn't exactly what I had in mind when we started courting. This isn't really what I'd hoped for, that I'd be stuck on a donkey going to a town I don't know and have to pay more taxes. That's the last thing I want to be doing when I'm about to give birth.
That is a rip.
You know, we forget about this part of the story, but it's very real. And they must have been feeling overwhelmed and filled with questions and wondering how they were going to get out from the burden that they were carrying. And yet she's getting more uncomfortable. So you can see, like then, as it is now, it was a time of taxation. It was a burdensome time. And it was a time of uncertainty for this young couple. And they were feeling the pressure of the moment. And can you imagine what Joseph must have been experiencing? His new bride is about to have her baby, and he's going to a town he hadn't been in a long time, and he gets there and he starts looking for a place to stay. Can you see him? He goes to the inn. Oh, finally, Mary, we made it. There's an inn. And he knocks on the innkeeper's door, and the innkeeper says, "Oh, yes, how can I help you? I need a room. I really need a room. You don't know how bad I need a room. My bride is expecting." "No, sir, we have no room in the inn for you." They had a housing crisis in Bethlehem. There was no rooms left. They had more people than they had rooms. We got a housing crisis in Bethlehem, and they're wondering, where are we going to go? But to complicate matters, Mary is with child, and she's about to deliver. And Joseph is no doctor, and now they have no place. And he's scrambling. He's saying, "Mr. Innkeeper, is there anything you could do? Please, somebody help me. My bride's about to deliver." Can you hear it? Can you see it? You got to picture it. And all of a sudden, the innkeeper looks and says, "I'm sorry, sir, but I don't have much, but I do know there's a stable out back, an old barn. It's not all that luxurious, but at least get you in and out of, under some cover for the night." Joseph said, "That will do. That's fine." Can you see? Here's Mary waddling her way back into the barn. And Joseph's panicking, trying to clear it up and say, "I don't know what we're going to do. And this is all strange." And sure enough, that incredible, unbelievable night happened in the midst of incredible uncertainty, great taxation, when they were shut out of one place after another, and it looked like all the odds were against them. She goes ahead and brings forth the child. It says, wrapped him in swaddling clothes and placed him in a feed box. Can you imagine this promised king, this Prince of Peace? He didn't come by way of a palace. He wasn't escorted by a private jet. He didn't come in a Maserati. He came by way of a donkey, born in a barn out back, humble, and he was witnessed by cattle. He's surrounded by sheep dung. It didn't smell good. It wasn't pretty. But, Madam Speaker, something incredible came out of something very, very, very ordinary. You see, Mary and Joseph are incredible people through the lens of history. But if you were to look at them, they didn't have large pedigrees, and they didn't have big names, and they didn't have wealth. They were common folk that had exceptional favor on their life and chosen for an exceptional purpose. Well, I think there's a lot of Canadians that find themselves in uncertain times and under the weight of great taxation that can draw hope from this timeless story. And no matter how ordinary they feel, and no matter how stacked the odds may be against them, and how many times they may feel overlooked by society and forgotten by governments, there's someone who still knows their name and still recognizes them. And that's what the story of Christmas is all about, is that we're not alone, but he came to us. And Madam Speaker, I love this story because the first ones to be entrusted with the great news of the newborn Savior and the babe in the manger were not the kings and rulers of the day. Guess who it was? The farmers, the shepherds, those tending their flocks where on the hillside at night, and when the stars were brightly shining and the angels lit up and they gave the message, "I got great news of glad joy, good news for all people, peace on earth and goodwill to all men." Who was that given to? Madam Speaker, that wasn't given to the rulers of the day. That news was entrusted to the common folks, the forgotten ones, the sheep herders, the farmers on the hillside. And I think that relates to us as parliamentarians. Some of the greatest news, some of the best ideas, some of the things that will help get our country back on the right track will be found at the tables of ordinary folks hearing their stories, listening to their challenges, understanding where they're coming from. And if we took time to listen to more shepherds and farmers and truck drivers and oil workers and bucket carriers and waitresses, I think we'd gain a lot more wisdom than spending a whole lot more time at fancy conferences, paying big money, listening to the so-called experts tell us things that obviously have misled us in so many ways. But if we get back to the people that built this country, to the common folks, guess what? I think there's wisdom there that can get us out of the malaise that we're in now. And I got to wrap up the little story. I'm down to, 5 minutes? Oh, my land, I got to bring it down to a close. But we can't leave it with the shepherds and the angels singing on high and Mary and Joseph and the baby. There was 3 others that came. They were called the wise men. I love this about the story. The 3 wise men, or the magi, came from afar. Because wise people know and recognize sometimes you got to go a long ways to find the truth in life. Sometimes you got to be willing to step out of your comfort zone, come down out of your high places and go to the lowly places to find some of the most precious gifts that can be found. And those 3 wise men were wise indeed. They were wise enough to seek out the answers for what they were facing in an uncommon place. And they followed a star, and it got them to the city or the town of Bethlehem. And they came bearing gifts. Do you remember the 3 gifts? Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And you know, when they showed up with the gold obviously spoke to the financial resources. How can we reflect the wisdom of the wise men? Perhaps we can help the less fortunate with our resources. And if we've been blessed with some goods, let's remember to give to those good charities that do good things in our communities, that make a difference in people's lives in a real way. Let's remember to bring our finances and our gold to the table. And when we give to the least fortunate, we are actually giving it to the King, and it brings honor to him. The second one was what? Frankincense. Frankincense was the incense which basically represented the prayers of the people throughout the ages. And the good news about prayer is prayer lives on. The prayers of our forefathers, our mums and our dads, and yes, the prayers of our parents and our own prayers will live on. And when we bring our prayers to God, it's a gift to him. The wise men brought that. And there's prayers for peace that are going on right now all over the world, looking for peace. This time of year, when we remember there's a promise of peace that's offered to us. And we can give that to him. And we can give that to others. And the last one that they brought was myrrh. What was myrrh symbolic of? Myrrh was the ointment that they brought to heal wounds. It represented brokenness. It's amazing about this king, who's different than other kings. The greatest gift that we can honor him with is our vulnerabilities and our brokenness. And I think there's a lot of Canadians and a lot of people throughout our world that are hurting right now. And Christmas can be a time of a lot of mixed things, filled with a lot of joy. But for those who've recently lost loved ones, there's a lot of hurt and a lot of pain, a lot of questions. My own family knows what it is. I lost a brother at Christmas season. He was 34 years old. He had 3 young daughters, and I watched my parents age overnight. He passed away on Boxing Day of 2007. And yes, as a person of faith, I can tell you that Christmas is mixed for us. We have many joyful memories, but we have some painful ones. But I can tell you this, Madam Speaker. I am thankful for the greatest gift that was ever given at Christmas because it helped my family. And it's my prayer for everyone in this house that it helps all of you to know that yes, he came for everyone on every side of this house, irregardless of partisanship or politics, because there's things bigger than politics in life. And that's the greatest gift that was ever given. Because his name was to be called Emmanuel, which means God is with us. And he's with us in uncertain times. He's with us in hurtful times. He's with us in painful times and in joyous times. And he promised to never leave us. So, Madam Speaker, with that I conclude that my wish for this house and for everyone in Canada that maybe perhaps is hurting right now, may he be your Emmanuel, your God who is with you and with us. Thank you, and Merry Christmas to you and your families.
Question.